All right, let's go forward. Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10 says this: Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Once again, fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. We know that Isaiah is the author of this particular text. Isaiah was a prophet to the northern kingdom of Israel. Let's say northern because Israel was divided into two kingdoms after the death of King Solomon. They had 10 tribes that went to the north with their own king, 2 tribes to the south with their own king. At this particular time of the text, they were being overtaken by the Assyrian army, and God permitted it. They were taken captive by the Assyrian army, and so God gives the prophet a word to encourage the people while they're going through a difficult season. So here's a question. Anybody going through a difficult season right now? God has a word for you. God has a word for you. This word right here, this particular promise, is designed to reassure God's people that despite their fears and despite their difficulties, that God will be their protector and God will be their strength in that situation. To not see the situation bigger than they see the power of their God. That's the point of this. And God breaks down why we ought to trust him more than we trust what these eyes see here. All right. So in the essence of the text, if there's any overarching themes, I would say there's these three overarching themes. The first one is the theme of God's sovereignty. Sovereignty. What does sovereign mean? It means that he is in full control despite what might be going on in the world. You got to know that God is still in full control. Don't be dismayed, as young people say. Don't get it twisted. Don't believe everything that these eyes see, because God is sovereign, and God is permitting whatever is happening in your life and my life right now is happening by the permissive will of God. Whatever is happening in this world is happening by the permissive will of God. God is permitting it because in the grand scheme of God's plan, God is going to find a way to bring good out of evil. He's going to find a way to bring blessings out of difficulty. That's the kind of God that we serve. So the first theme is his sovereignty. The second theme is his faithfulness. The fact that we can trust him no matter what. Why? Because he said that he'll never abandon us. He'll never leave us nor forsake us. So we have his sovereignty, we have his faithfulness, and also the theme of his power. His power. What is the theme of his power in this particular text? That he strengthens and that he upholds his people when life weakens us. All of those, everything I just said is chock full right in that one verse. And so I want to go through, I want to delineate them, and I want to break it down piece by piece, specifically as it relates to how we can digest it or metabolize it in a very practical way. Meaning, how do we take this verse and apply it to our lives and make it useful to us so that we don't have to walk in fear, so that we don't have to be confused about anything, and so that we don't have to be overcome or overwhelmed by what it is that our eyes see. Right? Because in this season right here, we have to walk. We have to see life through the eyes of the Spirit. That's it. We have to see life through the eyes of the Spirit and not just these human eyes, because the human eyes will tell you that evil is winning. But the eyes of the Spirit see God's sovereignty, and we see God's faithfulness, and we see God's power, especially if you've been walking with God for a while. So let's dig into the verse. Let's dig into the verse, and I thank you guys for sticking around. I don't want to shortchange this at all, so I'm going to dig into it, and God willing, you guys will hang in there. All right. So the first part of the verse is God commanding us not to fear. And remember, it's a command, not a suggestion. It's a command, not a suggestion. He says, fear not, for I am with you. And if God commands us to do anything, it also means that he's already given us the strength and the ability not to do it. If he says, do not fear, then we already have the power. We have God's power to help us not to walk in fear. In the flesh and our own human strength, we can't do that. We'll be walking in fear all day long. We'll be timid. We'll be blown to and forth by the winds of the world and by all the stuff, craziness that's going on. That's why we have to walk in the Spirit and not fulfill the desires of the flesh. When God gives a command, along with the command comes the ability to carry out what he's commanding us to do. If that wasn't the case, then God would be setting us up for failure. And I don't think that God is into that right there. So he says, fear not. When we walk in fear, we made a choice to walk in fear. I'll tell you why. Fear is a common human experience, right? It's a common thing. It comes with being human. Everybody gets fearful from time to time. But what this text is talking about is to not be overcome by fear, not be consumed by fear. Not allow fear to have such a grip on you that you lose sleep and that you're so worried about things that are going on, or about some people are worried about stuff that hasn't even happened yet and probably will never happen. He's saying, don't be consumed by fear. Don't allow the enemy to use fear in that way and consume you. Why? Because I'm with you. That's what he's saying. If you got me with you, then we are together. We're more than the world against you. If you have God on your side, he says, I'm with you. You don't need anybody else or anything else. I'm with you. But you have to really metabolize that and take it from the head, let it get all the way down in the heart, all the way down into the spirit, all the way down past the DNA, all the way down in the soul. The fact that God is with me. And if God is with me, you can walk through this earth in peace. I don't care who's on the throne. I don't care who's in charge. I don't care any of that stuff. None of that stuff will sway you at all if you really, 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 in your heart of hearts, believe that God is with you. You won't have to walk in fear. You won't walk in fear. People will be wondering why you're so peaceful, while everybody else is scampering around, all anxiety riddled, popping Xanax and popping everything else, trying to get some semblance of peace, out of external things. And God says, no, you don't have to do all that. You digest the fact in your spirit that I'm with you, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. And fear is also usually a direct result of who we're listening to externally and internally. Who and what we're listening to. The music that we listen to. All the talking heads on television that we listen to, and all that. Where is your information coming from? And is it godly information? Because if it's not, then that's enough to make you fearful. All that stuff going in your ear gate, all the stuff, it's sensory overload. There's no shortage of stations you can tune into, and then it just becomes, a whole bunch of just toxicity going into your ear gate. Okay? So you be encouraged. Hold on one second. You be encouraged by this word. That's the first part of this promise. He says, fear not, because I'm with you. You don't have to walk in fear. God's presence, here it is, God's presence should always bring peace in our lives. But I intentionally use the word should because it doesn't always bring peace in our lives. Not that it doesn't have the ability. It always has the ability. His presence brings peace. His presence is peace. Scripture calls Jesus the Prince of Peace. He doesn't just give us peace. He is our peace. And so why do we become consumed with fear sometimes? It's a choice. It's a choice as to what you're going to believe the most. Do you believe the God in you more than you believe what you're hearing on the TV? That's the difference right there. Whichever one we consume the most will consume us. If you consume just TV and the garbage and all the talking heads and all this is happening here and war here, crime here, killing this, that, that's enough to live in fear. That'll have you all kind of anxiety riddle. But when you get up in the morning and you bow down and you give glory to the one that gave you breath again, and you sit there and you take a few minutes to pray and thank him, and then meditate on his word, listen to a Bible app, and listen to his word being spoken into your ear, that brings about the presence of God literally going down into you. That's what you're digesting instead of digesting all of that poison stuff that makes us crazy. He says, when I'm with you, you don't have a reason to fear. When you allow all that other stuff to become your God, then you have no alternative but to walk in fear. Because God's presence, when we internalize God's presence and believe him completely, that he's with us every step of the way, in the good, bad, happy, sad, no matter what, that God is there in every single moment of your life. God is there on the job, off the job, driving the car, flying on a plane. When you know that God is there, you literally can walk this earth in peace. I'm not telling you what I heard, I'm telling you what I know. I found that place. I found that place. Yeah, you might get a little frustrated here and there, like I did when this whole thing glitched out. That's frustrating. Why? Because I don't want to let the people down. I don't want to let God down, and I don't want to let the people down. So that's more frustrating to me than anything, that I promoted this and put it out there for the people to come and eat and dine at the table of God. And then stuff happens, so that's a little frustrating. But even in that minute or two of frustration, I don't let it rob me of my peace. I come right back to my peaceful place. God, you're in charge. That's my peaceful place. You're in charge, God. I have no power over this. If you don't make it happen, then maybe it's not meant to happen. That's my peaceful place. Because God's presence, when we really trust God's presence, fear has no alternative but to loosen its grip on you. It has to let go. When you internalize God's presence, fear has to let you go. It has no other alternative. It's almost like we hold on to fear. It really doesn't hold on to us, because as soon as we make the choice to embrace God's presence fully, fear has to go. It has to let the grip go. So the choice is yours. The choice is mine. That situation you're dealing with right now, it's not bigger than the presence of God in your life. It's not. That's not a cliche. That's the truth. I don't care what you're facing. It's not bigger than God. So turn it over to God. Leave it there. Go to bed tonight. Get yourself some sleep. Get some rest. Get up in the morning and do it all over again. Trust God completely, and God will work it out. That's what Jesus meant when he was saying every day has enough trouble of its own. Because sometimes we're so stuck in the past, and we're all the way in the future and things that haven't even happened yet. And we're fearful of all this stuff. And he's saying, no, stay in the right here, right now, and embrace my presence. And take it like that, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. And you literally can start walking in a life of peace. Fear not, for I am with you. That's the first part of this. See, there's a couple of prerequisites that God he wants us to do, that we have to do in order to access the promises that are at the end of this verse. The first thing is to not walk in fear. Meaning, if we do walk in fear, we forfeit the promises that are at the end of this verse that I'll get to here in a second. Second thing he wants us to do after not walking in fear is to not be dismayed. He says, be not dismayed. Why? Because I am your God. Now, mind you, in terms of the context of this particular text, his original audience was the Jewish people, right? And he was talking to people who were living in a midst of a polytheistic world, meaning everybody had a God for everything. You could create your own God. You could take this bottle of water and turn it into your own God. And you could bow down to it and worship it. So there was gods everywhere, popping up everywhere. And that's why God says, be not dismayed. And this word dismayed means confused. He's saying, don't get it confused. I am your God. Don't be trusting in all that other stuff, because when that stuff lets you down, that's another reason why you walk in fear. Because the stuff you've been trusting in has let you down, because it doesn't have the power to keep you the way that I do. Good God Almighty. I know I'm just teaching here. I almost feel like preaching right now. He says, don't be dismayed. Look at how it's laying out. He gives us two prerequisites, two things we have to do in order to access the promise in this verse. Stop walking in fear and know that I'm with you. And then do not be dismayed. Don't be confused about what's going on, about human beings in power and all the rest of that trying to play God. He said, don't get it twisted, and don't be fearful. Don't be afraid of them. I'm with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I'm your God. Don't make anything else your God, because it won't have the ability to take care of you. Matter of fact, you will end up taking care of it. Think about it. Think about some of the things that became a God in your life and that became a God in my life. And it robbed us of everything and wanted more, because that's how Satan works. Steal, kill, and destroy. That's his end game. Steal, kill, and destroy. Nothing that he does is to bring life. Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Come and dine at my table and watch how blessed your life becomes. The second point, do not be dismayed. The word dismayed means don't be discouraged, don't be confused, and don't be walking around here hopeless like God is not taking care of you. That's what the word dismayed means. Don't be discouraged. Don't be confused. And don't walk around hopeless. Even if you're in a difficult situation, you're not hopeless. Because as long as you have God and you know that God has you, you'll never be hopeless. Never be. And then he uses this phrase that's a familiar phrase from the Old Testament. I love Old Testament. I'm an Old Testament scholar. That's what I studied in seminary and in Bible college. I love the Old Testament. And because the Old Testament paints a picture of why we needed Jesus to come and give us the new covenant, which gave us the New Testament. When you understand how all those work together, you can see the whole big picture of salvation that was in order from the time of the fall in the garden of the first human being that they called Adam, which means mankind or humankind. Not a name, a designation. Some people call him Adam as if it was his name. No, Adam means humankind, mankind. He was the first of mankind. And all of us came after him, born in sin, shaped in iniquity as a result of his fall, which is why we need to be born again. And that's what Jesus came to do. The phrase, I am, you see that in the Old Testament a lot. I am. He says, I am your God. I am. He's reminding us of the covenant that he made with Abraham. He's reminding us of the promises that he made to Moses and the wilderness wanderings. You know, he said, we are recipients on the back end of that promise through Jesus Christ. So he says, I am your God. You remember when God sent Moses to talk to Pharaoh, and Moses started making excuses. I can't, who am I to talk to the Pharaoh, most powerful man on earth? He said, tell him I am that I am, which means the eternal presence and power that is God. The eternal presence and the eternal power that we call God. He said, that's who I am. People call me all manner of things. They put all kind of names on me, to suit their own existence. But the fact of the matter is that I am the eternal presence, and I am the eternal power, and I am the sovereign God of the universe, of this entire everything that you can see and that you can't see. I'm the one who sits firmly on the throne. Tell them that's the one that sent you. You get a message, anybody get a message from that one right there, you got to bow down and humble yourself quickly, right? So God is saying that same one, I am, that I told Moses to tell Pharaoh. He said, that's who's walking with you right now. The same one that parted the sea for Moses and the children of Israel to walk through that difficult situation on dry ground. He can part your situation where you feel like you're drowning and give you some dry ground to walk through as well. He says, I'm the same God. I'm not a different God. I'm the same God that was with Moses. I'm the same God that was with Abraham. I'm the same God. I'm the same God. God in three persons, the blessed Trinity. I believe in God the Father. I believe in God the Son. I believe in God the Spirit. I believe that all three are one. He said, I'm the same God. Same God. When you know that, RTB, when you know that, and when you believe that, and when you internalize that, you're not shaken by the things of this world that your eyes see. Because you know better. You know that that ain't the end of the story. No matter what it looks like, it's not the end of the story. He said, I'm not just any God. I'm your God. I'm your God. He says, I'm committed to my people. I'm your God. And God remains faithful even when we struggle with doubt in the midst of our life's difficulties. He said, whatever you're going through, whenever you go through it, remember that I'm the one that gave permission to it. So if I allowed it to happen in your life, I'm going to carry you through it. I am your God. I am your God. Stop trusting in all that other crazy stuff that don't have the power to keep you. I am your God. He says, when you do those two things, when you stop being so fearful, and when you stop being so confused, when I've already laid everything out for you that you need to walk in a life of peace, a life free from fear on this earth, he said, then I'll release three promises to you. First part of it, he says, I will strengthen you. That's the end of the verse we're getting to now. I will strengthen you. Yep, he says, when you get weak in this world, and this world weakens you, and this world has a way of weakening us all from time to time in one way or another. Nobody's so super spiritual that you're always on the mountaintop. No, you will have some valley times too in this life, some valley seasons if you live long enough. You will have some valley seasons. But the good thing is that the same God that's the God of the mountain is the God in the valley. He says, I'm the same God. I am that I am, and I change not. I'm with you. Question becomes, will you believe me and will you access the power and the presence and the protection and the provisions that I bring for you? Will you believe that more than you believe it in some of this other stuff, these other false gods, that all they want to do is rob you and take your dignity and take from you and take everything you have, and they're still not satisfied until they take your life? So no, I'm the same God. You got to trust me even when you can't trace me. You got to trust me when you can't, when your eyes don't understand. You got to trust me with your heart. I'm the same God. I'm not changing. So if anything changed, you changed. He says, if you stop walking in fear, and if you stop walking around here confused and worried about all the stuff going in the world, I got some promises for you. Because that stuff will weaken you, but even when it weakens you, here's what I'm going to do. I will strengthen you. I'll give you strength. God empowers us when we're weak. The Apostle Paul said, when I'm weak, that's when I'm strong. When I stop fighting against God and when I let God have his way in my life, that's when I'm really strong. He's saying, when I rely on God's strength and not my own, that's when I'm really walking in the power. And that's when I'm walking in lockstep with the God of the universe. And he and I together are always the majority and never a minority. He says, I will strengthen you. Then he says, I will help you. I will help you. He ends this verse with three promises. I will strengthen you. I will help you. What is he talking about? He's juxtaposing himself with these other so-called false gods that can't help you. They can't help you. They only help themselves. He says, I will strengthen you and I will help you. Why? Because the God that we serve is not a distant God from us. Matter of fact, he's so close that when you believe Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, and you believe God has raised him from the dead, the Bible says you shall be saved. And at that moment, God, the Holy Spirit, takes up residence in you. He says, I'm not distant from you. I'm so close that my spirit is in you. But sometimes you walk this earth like I don't even live inside of you. He's not distant from us. He's always actively assisting and supporting and protecting us in ways that we can't even imagine. Think about your trip on the highway today, going to work or going wherever you came from. Don't you know that it was angels that protected you when you saw accidents all along the way? But we just think it's just going to be that way. Oh, I'm just a good driver. No, you're not that good of a driver. No, it was God protecting us from things that were coming our way that we didn't even have an idea of. He does that every day. He does that all day. He says, I'm the one that will strengthen you. I'm the one that will help you. I'm the one. Stop putting your hope and trust in these people that can't give you strength. These things, these idols that can't give you strength. They only take your strength. They can't help you. They only hurt you. He says, you got to trust in me. I'm the God that's actively working on your behalf for your good. Always working on your behalf for your good. That's who you have to trust in. And then his third promise is, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. I will uphold you. Because life can beat you down. Life can beat us down sometimes. You know, and sometimes it feels like you're going down for the last time. He says, I will uphold you. When you stop walking in fear and you start walking in the confidence of God and in the courage of God, knowing that the Spirit of God lives on the inside of you. He says, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. You know, the right hand it symbolizes power and authority and victory. How do we know that? Well, Jesus sat down at the right hand of God, not the left hand. The left hand, according to history, the left hand is the hand of deception. Somebody trying to shake your left hand. Right hand, the right hand. Authority, power, the right hand. He says, I'll uphold you with my right hand. Psalm 68, verse 8, as a cross reference says, God, your right hand upholds me. That was David talking about how in difficult times when he was about to go down for the last count, that God upheld him. And he always talks about the right hand of God, the right hand. Think about Peter walking on the water, trying to come to Jesus. The storms of life begin to rage. The waters begin to roar. He loses his focus and he begins to sink. As long as he was focused on Jesus and not the elements around him, he could walk in peace and he could do things that he could not do in his own strength. Literally defy nature and walk on water. But when he paid attention to all the noise around him, that's when he began to sink. But even then, Jesus reached out his right hand, held him up. Symbolic of the fact that God will always reach out and catch us when we're falling if we cry out to him. If we cry out, because he won't impose his will on us. God will never let us fall when we put our hope and trust in him. We may stumble, we may go through difficult times, we will go through difficult times, you know. But he said he won't let us fall completely away from the faith when we trust him. Even in our darkest moment, He'll be there, but we have to acknowledge his presence and access his power and his protection and his provisions. He's always there in your darkest moment, in my darkest moment, in the difficult times that we live in today. God is right there. Question becomes, who's gonna access and welcome and fully absorb his power, his presence, his peace, his protection, his provisions. All of those are in this one verse, are in this promise that when you stop walking in fear and stop walking this earth like a confused person when I've already given you the instructions, stop walking around fearful and hopeless and like these politicians or whoever, all the stuff going on, like they are really in control and running the earth. No, they're not. God is in control. His sovereignty, his faithfulness, his power. Fear not. Come right back to the beginning as I conclude here. Fear not. This is the verse. Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed. Don't be confused. Don't be hopeless. Don't be discouraged. For I am your God. When you do those two things, then I will strengthen you. I'll give you strength. When you run out of strength, I'll be your strength. I will help you. And when life knocks you over and you're about to fall, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. This is the word of God for the people of God. I pray that this word encourages you, blesses you. Take it, digest it, believe it, let it get deep down in your soul. And you watch it produce a harvest. It'll give you peace. Yep. Whatever you have to face, up the road, you'll be able to face it with peace. Knowing that God is right there with you. Right there with you in every single circumstance.